Welcome to another edition of the Hampton Roads Chamber Chats. My name is Brian Stevens, and today we're going to chat about our leadership exchange programs. We have two veterans of those trips with us today, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves to you, starting with Glenn.
I'm Glen Robertson. I'm an attorney with Wolcott Rivers Gates and a former chamber board chairman.
I'm Andria McClellan, and I serve on the Norfolk City Council and also chair of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and chair of Hampton Roads Transit. And I have absolutely loved the leadership exchange.
And I know you two are very busy people, so thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us today.
Glad to do it. We believe in it.
Well, Glenn, since you do believe in it, tell us what a leadership exchange program is.
Yeah, that is, we put together a delegation of local business leaders, government leaders, nonprofit leaders, education leaders, and we take them to a region that has shown particular progress, growth, prosperity, things we think we can learn from. The first one that I was on was Nashville in, I want to say, 2017. We've also gone to Pittsburgh, we've gone to Raleigh-Durham, and this year we went to Denver. And we meet with folks there that are the people who've made things happen in those communities, in government, in nonprofit, the arts, sports, all sorts of different topic areas. And we meet with them, we have panels, we have tours, and we bring back a whole lot of really good information that people like Andria and her colleagues in government and Brian and myself and others can try to apply here in order to help Hampton Roads have similar successes.
Absolutely. So we're looking for best practices in some of those areas that we may not be doing quite as good in. Andrea, what are some of those best practices that you have picked up on some of these trips?
I think the regional collaboration piece is what we're all craving, and so I've been to Denver, and I also went to Pittsburgh, and we saw some great opportunities there of collaboration. For example, in Denver, they have a regional fund that goes into their scientific and cultural arts institutions, where they, through I think it's 7 counties, that they are able to bring in about $80 million a year to help fund their museums and their art institutions, which I think is a great opportunity for us to consider. The regional transit that we've seen both in Denver as well as in Pittsburgh has been really great. It's just, there's a lot to be learned. Tourism, the airport in Denver, and opportunities to improve our airport system, of course. But what I would say is, while we are there to look for best practices elsewhere, and I've certainly gained a lot of insight there, I've also gained more insight onto how our region works, because this is a great opportunity for our leaders to have 2 to 3 days of one-on-one time to really get to know each other and develop relationships. And those relationships are the things that will ultimately help us succeed in the region. So I can, I understand where somebody's coming from, and then I'm able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I need help here, or what are your thoughts here? Can you give me some candid feedback on this issue? And so I get not only a lot out of these trips from learning about these other places, but also learning from our own regional leaders as well.
Yeah,
and they're fun.
They are fun. They are fun. We try to have some fun as well. I wasn't gonna highlight that, but I guess you did. But I am glad you highlighted the fact that there's a lot of social capital being built, because
Absolutely.
you can't go on these trips with a bunch of other leaders from the region and not really build that social capital, which is so beneficial when you do get back here. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I think you never really get to know someone as well as when you travel with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Andrea's talking about, the time you're together and the opportunity to discuss what you're seeing and learning and compare notes, and then just to know each other when you get back. And that's actually how I met Andria, and that's really beneficial, I think, too.
I couldn't agree more. Glenn, if you had to pick 2 lessons that you think were the most relevant on all these trips, a common theme of all these trips, what would those 2 be?
Well, I hate to repeat Andria, but it's regional collaboration.
Regional
Without
collaboration.
question. Thinking regionally, having a regional identity, and overcoming the boundary lines of your various localities and thinking about the region as a region. That's how business thinks. Businesses that are looking at coming to your region don't care about those boundary lines. They want to know the region functions together and has a vision together, and a regional identity, and that they believe in that. And I think everywhere we've been, that has been a theme that has been a major part of their success stories, and they're all very open about the fact that that's been an essential part of their success story. So frequently they've had to overcome a past where they didn't play well together, and they've done that really, really well done, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was
Andrew,
gonna say,
what-
well, one of the things that I've noticed is their successes have been built on, as you mentioned, regional collaboration, and the business community does that well. It does that well here, through the chamber's efforts, and all these other localities. But I think one of the things that's differentiated is we also need to have regional collaboration at the elected level. You know, that's, obviously I'm biased in that opinion, but I would like to see more of my colleagues join us in the future. So that's a challenge to all of you. Because we need to have that same sense of regional collaboration amongst elected officials as well, and between elected officials and the business community.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. We
It
need
is
to
so
support
important.
one another. So we saw a lot of, for example, in Denver, the regional train system. Wow, I mean, they're doing really wonderfully.
Yeah.
As chair of HRT, I want to strengthen our regional transit system, and so we need our business community to also help with that too. So there are a lot of lessons learned there, but it's really, it's that social capital that you mentioned, Brian, and I think it's really critical.
And to follow up on Andrew's point, Denver was a classic example of how the governmental element got together. They have the Denver Regional Council of Governments, 56 elected government officials all on this together to think regionally and address issues regionally. And I think that's fantastic. I'd love to see that become the default way of thinking around here, and I appreciate the thing that Andrea is a leader in that concept and that way of thinking. So I think it's good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the challenges we have is when we go on these trips, we learn these great lessons, but it's so hard to bring them back and implement them. What are your thoughts on that, Andrea? How do we go about doing a better job of implementing what we learn?
Well, I think it's our challenge, right, as leaders, not to just go, but to come back and talk about that. And the first meeting of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, which comprises all 17 municipalities, I challenged each and every one of my colleagues, the other elected officials, to come next year on this leadership exchange, because we need to get more of those folks there. You know, one of the other things that I was really intrigued with Denver, the Denver visit, was the Denver Pact. I forget the specific in terms of the economic development agencies.
Mhm.
They literally sign a promise.
Code of ethics.
Code of
Code of
ethics.
ethics,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So that they are working together to bring in new business, but not to poach off of one another. And I think that's really critical, and I believe we have that in place in Hampton Roads, but to have an actual code of ethics that has been promulgated is interesting, and I would love to see that happen here.
I completely agree with that. We were all very impressed with that. I thought it was critically important to them, and they were very upfront about the fact that buying into that has been an important part of their success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Maybe that's something you and I can work on in the new year.
I think so.
And then run it by the elected leaders.
Sure,
See if we
sure.
get that in place here in Hampton Roads.
That'd be a big step.
That's a big step. That's a great idea. Glenn, why do you go on these trips? I know you've gone on several, and you're a big fan of them.
He loves to sing karaoke.
Well, I'm not nearly as good at it as Andrea or Sean Avery from Hampton Roads Workforce Council. He's fantastic. I go because I believe in Hampton Roads. You know, I grew up a little bit west of here in Franklin, so this has been my home for most of my life, and I think we have tremendous potential, and I don't, in all honesty, think we've tapped into all that potential. So finding these areas, which the chamber staff and Hampton Roads Planning Council to help us with, that have overcome challenges and have become so prosperous and so successful and vibrant, I want us to be like that. And if I can go along and contribute something to that, if I can help recruit people that I think can do so, I want to be part of that. And I enjoy the opportunity to meet people like Andrea and others that I've met on these trips. I think it's good for me, and I think frankly, it's probably good for my law firm to know these folks and have contacts with people. So I think it's good for businesses. I think there's that sort of professional element is there that makes it worthwhile, and then the personal and community element of it, and it is fun too.
Yeah. Andrea, why do you go?
Well, listen, I grew up in the region, but then lived in other big cities and came back here, and so any chance I can go out and, see what other big cities are doing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we are a big city, right? We're a bunch of little cities, but together we are a big city, and sometimes you have to leave to appreciate what you've got. right here at home. And for me, it's going to Denver and saying, you know what, we actually already do that. We do it really well. Yeah, we could do this better. So it's number one, it's that. Number two, it's getting to know more people from this area. And I know that sounds strange that you have to leave to do that, but it's as we call it, forced family fun. You know, where it's you know, you sit on a bus and you're traveling someplace, and you know, you're sitting next to a different person each time, and you're sitting at dinner. Also, just the connections that I was able to make, and we were all able to make in terms of other amazing business leaders, hopefully to attract new business perhaps from Denver here. You know, I think of it as an economic development opportunity as well.
Absolutely.
So it's not only about learning from them, it's pitching them who we are, because we have to remember, we sometimes do that, you know, sort of ugly stepchild syndrome.
Yeah.
And we're pretty amazing.
We got a lot of assets here,
in
don't we?
Hampton Roads.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we've got to continue to remember that.
Continue to remember that, yeah. Well, as both of you know, because you've agreed to serve on our planning committee, we're going to Charlotte, North Carolina in June of this upcoming year. Glenn, what do you hope to get out of that trip?
Well, much like the other trips, I'm looking to see how they have become what they've become. Charlotte, Mecklenburg, the county around Charlotte, they were in the forefront of regional thinking and getting over the idea that if Mecklenburg County gets a headquarters to locate there, it's a defeat for Charlotte, or if Charlotte does, it's a defeat for Mecklenburg. They think that way. It's good for all of us. It's a win, and they were on the forefront of it, and they've been copied by the places we've been. So they've obviously had 30 years or so of experience with that, and we can really learn from how they've progressed with it. And I look at Charlotte, and I remember when I was growing up, Charlotte wasn't Charlotte. You know, we were bigger than Charlotte back then, and Charlotte has really taken off in the last 30 years, and I want to see how they did it, and I want to steal it as much as we can and bring it back here.
Good. Andrea, what do you hope to get out of it?
You know, I'm very intrigued by the innovation and entrepreneurship piece of the puzzle, and to see what Charlotte is doing along those lines. We so often talk about, you know, we go whale hunting. We want to get the big companies here, but it's really about creating a culture for our small businesses to grow and to cultivate and expand. And I think Charlotte's done a really good job there, and balancing between the large corporations where they've done well with headquarters, but also creating that sense of place for entrepreneurs. You know, as we all know, a lot of it's placemaking, right? It's not just about the businesses, but it's attracting the workers, and we've got to have that talent pool. And so, how do we create that with you know, whether it's arts and culture, and it's things to do and places to go and great restaurant scene, and so Charlotte's done that. It's a fun place to be.
It is.
And so when I hope people think about Hampton Roads, they think, oh my gosh, what a great quality of life. And so we've got to focus on that too. So I want to glean that while we're down there in June.
I might add, one of the things that I think we really want to look at too is because Charlotte's been so intentional about what they call economic mobility. You know, taking these people who don't have all of the resources that others do, and making sure, and they track it, making sure that they can rise through the economic ladder. And that's one of the things I think we want to take a deep dive in as well.
Which one of, was it Pittsburgh, their motto was, if it's not for all, it's not for us.
Yeah.
And I think Charlotte has that
Charlotte has
similar
that
sort
as
of
well.
mentality. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Raleigh-Durham was really good on entrepreneurial culture, and
Yeah.
I agree that Charlotte is doing that too, and that's another thing that, because it is, I don't want to say easier, but more practical to grow, start, and build businesses locally than to go out and whale hunt. So.
Yeah. Real quick, if somebody's watching, they're curious, what advice do you have for them relative to the LEX?
Go, sign up, recruit others to go, and participate actively.
Yeah.
You will not regret it, and you will want to go every year after, as I've done since I started doing it.
Yeah. Andrea, any advice?
I would say, yes, sign up, but when you go with an open mind.
Yeah.
Sit next to somebody that you've never met before. You make sure that you ask questions and that you listen attentively.
Absolutely. I want to thank you both. Like I said at the beginning, I know you're very busy individuals, and taking the time to come in and talk about our Leadership Exchange Program, we truly appreciate it. Thank you for all that you're doing for Norfolk and the region, And for the chamber and the business community, you guys are tremendous leaders that we respect, and I just want to thank you so much.
Very kind of you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this edition of the Hampton Roads Chamber Chat. Thank you for watching.